Welcome to another Spreadsheeters video guide. You can find written instructions for these steps on the Spreadsheeters website. In this video, we'll see how can I compare two Excel spreadsheets for differences. Comparing two Excel sheets for differences is something you will frequently need to do when working with data sets. This happens especially when you're trying to consolidate data from multiple sources and need to check for differences. You could put the worksheets side by side and manually check them, but of course this method is highly prone to error and is not feasible when the data set is very large. So there are two types of differences that we need to look at. One is when you're trying to compare missing value, that is data that is in one worksheet and not in the other. And the second way is to check for differences when you have two identical worksheets and you need to check whether the values in both match or do not match. So these are two types of scenarios you can encounter when comparing worksheets. Let's look at the first one. So the first one is to check for missing data. Here I have two lists of customers, one from an executive Mary and another one from an executive George. So I need to compare both these lists. So I will first take the list from Mary, and here I'm going to check whether all these customers listed here are in the sheet given by George. To do that, I will use the VLOOKUP function. So now VLOOKUP will takes a value and now checks for this value in another table or a table array. In this case, I'm going to look for this value in the table given by George. So I will go to George and I will select the table on the George sheet. Now the next argument is what I should return if I find a matching value. In this case, I'm going to take the value of the second column. And then I will say false, meaning I want Excel to look for an exact match, and say enter. Now you can see that an error message appears. That means Excel has not been able to find a match for this customer code. Now before copying this formula down, I will make it constant by selecting the cell reference and pressing F4. I can now copy this down to the rest of the cells by dragging the fill handle. And straight away I can see which names are common and which are not. So I can see that these names where there's an error message are the names that appear in the sheet from Mary and not in that from George. So the next step is to repeat the exercise on the other sheet. So here again we will use the VLOOKUP, but in this case I will be taking a value from the George sheet and looking it up on the Mary sheet. So again I'll select this table. Again I'm looking for the second column and say false. So in this case the name does match. So I can make this constant and then copy this down to the rest of the column to check for all the other names. So again here the error messages indicate that this name appears only on this sheet and not on the Mary sheet. So using this, applying VLOOKUP to both the sheets, I can find out which values are different between the sheets. So now let's look at the second scenario where here I have two different sets of data. I have for 21st Jan and for 22nd Jan, and I want to compare whether the order values match or not. To do this, I will use the if function. Here the lists are identical, and I just want to check for the order value. So I say if. Now the first argument is the test. So I want to test if this value is equal to the value on the other sheet. So this is the condition. I want to know if that the value on 21st Jan sheet is equal to 22nd Jan. If it is equal, I want the word true to be displayed. If it is not, I want the word false to be displayed, and press enter. So these values match, and so the value of true is returned. I can just drag this down to the rest of the columns and I get the comparison. So I can see which numbers don't match by the word false that is given next to the number. So this is how you can compare two Excel spreadsheets for differences. Please read the appended article for further guidance.